Well, good afternoon, everyone. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome to Saudi House. My name's Konstantin Kotzias. I'm a European director at Bloomberg. Absolute pleasure to have you all here today at Saudi House in Davos for this discussion, enabling investment at scale. And having been to a lot of sessions already today, there's a tremendous amount of challenges that are going to require investment at scale. So fantastic to be joined by such an esteemed group of speakers to discuss and debate that today. We are waiting for Dina Powell, who I think is just, it's all right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, how are you? Good to see you.
And we may want to just see if we can close the doors to avoid any background noise. Look, so around the world, we're clearly navigating a period of heightened uncertainty, geopolitical, financial, regulatory. And in that context, the question of how governments create clarity, create that confidence and scale for private investments never been more important. And Saudi Arabia offers an absolutely compelling case study. Under Vision 2030, as we all know, the kingdom has pursued a comprehensive reform agenda, strengthened the regulatory framework, deployed targeted incentive mechanisms, developed all sorts of new models for public-private partnership. They've done a tremendous amount of work, and I think one of the things we're going to talk about today is what more can we be doing? But if you've been going to the kingdom for a long time, which I have, and I know some of our guests have, you'll know that these reforms are not abstract. They are translating into measurable outcomes, faster market entry, deeper investor participation, and clearly growing competitiveness. And that momentum is tangible, and we're absolutely privileged and honoured to be joined by His Excellency Khalid Al Faleh, Minister of Investment, who I have to say I've known for a long time. I would call a friend, who's been driving this momentum and this focus, and is always very keen to hold himself and the team there to account as to what more can be done. We'll then be hearing perspectives from a really terrific group of global investors and leaders. Noubar Afeyan, founder and CEO of Flagship Pioneering, Anuj Ranjan, CEO of private equity at Brookfield, Hui Swin Hyung, President and CEO of State Street Investment Management, Dina Powell McCormick, President and Vice Chairman of Meta, Advisory Board Member of BDT and MSD, and Marco Arcelli, CEO of Aqua Power. So all across that investment landscape and value chain, insights from energy, infrastructure, private equity. This discussion will be live streamed, so we encourage thoughtful audience participation. And questions, I think, can also be submitted through, I believe, an iPad or scanning a QR code, but you have the details. So, welcome, Excellency, and we'll be getting some opening remarks from you, and then we'll be involving the panel.
Let me find a place to stand without... No, I'll stand.
Are you sure?
I'll stand with my hand on your shoulder. Just
No pressure.
So, Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon,
Assalamu
everyone, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not surprised that we have standing room only and people are peeking from outside the windows at this star-studded panel. This is truly the A-team of global investment that have been partners with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that have come together with this panel moderated by a great friend, Konstantin Kotzias from Bloomberg. I think it goes without saying, and Konstantin mentioned it, what the globe is going through, what the world is going through in terms of changes, tectonic shifts as they have been referred to, whether it's the geopolitics, the supply chain that is being reconfigured, the energy demand and energy transition, the need for all of the right inputs into the digital transformation that probably we have never seen in our human history, that is unraveling in front of our own eyes, and represented on the panel by no less than Dina Powell, who just assumed her new role as Vice Chairman and President of Meta, and has chosen her first speaking opportunity in the new role and in Davos to be here at Saudi House on this panel. So all of this is going to require investments at scale and with speed and with risk mitigation and with access to markets, whether it's local, regional, or global, with access to human talent, with access to partners that people can trust, and in a place that has a clear North Star, a vision that not just the government, not just the country, but the partners of the country from around are focused on getting to, and with the agility and flexibility to navigate as shocks and disruptions take place, which inevitably they always do. This is the journey we're on in Saudi Arabia, a journey that is 10 years in the making since we launched Vision 2030 in 2016. And it's not going to finish in 2030. 2030 is an intermediate milestone because the kingdom will continue to shape the future through investment. So I'm thankful again to this panel for answering our invitation to be here on the first day of Davos 2026, which is going, watch out, by the end of the week, this is going to be quite a monumental Davos meeting where many, many great things hopefully will happen, and many of them will be around investment, disruptions in technology that are good for humanity, and I think we will be shaping that conversation here and giving some examples of what's working in Saudi Arabia. And my call to the panel, please be open and tell us what we need to do more of. This is not about cheerleading the kingdom. I've done enough of that already in my opening remarks. Tell us what we need to do more to get to that destination, the North Star that Vision 2030 is all about. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Excellency, and thank you for your focus and vision. And I think that the way in which you articulate that vision, strategy, execution, agility demonstrates a lot of your commercial background, because we don't often hear that, let's be honest, from politicians and policymakers. Let's get straight into it. We start with an opening narrative theme around how global investors are evaluating markets at scale. Super relevant. Anuj, can I start with you, Brookfield? You're deploying a tremendous amount of capital, both in the kingdom and in the region. From your perspective as a global institutional investor, deploying long-term capital, and we were talking earlier on about some of the sectors and asset classes, give this audience some of the decisive factors that you look for when evaluating a market or jurisdiction, particularly around some of the things His Excellency talked about: regulatory certainty, policy continuity, ability to scale, and then perhaps maybe close with areas that the kingdom might be able to improve on.
Sure. So I think we've been at Brookfield. We're now in 36 countries around the world. Many of those are high growth markets. And whether they be India, whether they be obviously the broader Middle East, including Egypt and parts of Africa, North Africa, of course, the kingdom. And whenever we enter a new market, we kind of go through the same thought process about whether or not we should be investing in that market. And some of them are common things that we would all know and say. One is obviously a good rule of law. You want to understand that if you have a contract, the counterpart will honor the contract. Two is a deep talent pool. It's great to invest in markets that are almost self-sufficient in terms of great talent, which again I've found in the kingdom has in spades. The third is a market that you can scale in. For a group like Brookfield, we want to know that if we're going to invest decades of time and effort and a lot of capital in investing in a market, that the prize is worth it. And in the kingdom, we found that definitely to be true, as well as we have, for example, in India. The interesting thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, that I think is intangible, not tangible quality, is what we call a culture of respect for capital. And this is something that we pay a lot of attention to. It's hard to say what exactly it is. You could find a place that checks all the boxes of the first three, but does not have a culture of respect for capital or foreign capital. We want to know that we're investing in a market where the people and the institutions are appreciative of the capital we bring and the knowledge we bring and the expertise we bring. And honestly, that's actually the most important thing. It almost trumps the rule of law and the rest of it, because rule of law is a piece of paper, but if you have a culture of respect for capital, you have a place that wants to see you as an investor succeed, then we feel very good, and we've been treated very well in those markets where we've invested. Conversely, we've invested in countries we thought were great and had every single thing else going for it, but they did not have that culture of respect for capital, and we did not have a good experience. So I think that's been one of the key, I think, learnings we've had more broadly, which we apply to every market in the world.
That's really interesting. That respect for capital one, I think we've all had experiences in jurisdictions where that has been wanting. But that certainly is, you definitely get that feeling in the kingdom that it's a partnership around that return. Yusin, can I turn to you? You're primarily in the public markets. It's been a really fascinating period for you, but turning specifically to the kingdom, what signals, what issues are you looking for in your space around investor confidence, and what ultimately determines where, in your view or your team's view, whether capital moves from that sort of interest assessment to actual allocation?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me here. As you know, we're one of the world's largest asset managers, and we focus on custom index and ETFs. And so for us, market liquidity, transparency, efficiency is incredibly important. And some of the regulatory changes that we've seen in the kingdom, allowing foreign investors to basically hold as much as they want in certain sectors, not having to subject themselves to minimum asset levels, or to seek approval to be invested in the market, I think are very, very strong developments, as are eliminating equity swaps and therefore providing that sort of visibility, transparency into the market. And so from our perspective, what we want to see is just continued interest coming into the kingdom. And our desire was really focusing on this foreign direct investment and how can we, through the products and vehicles that we have, bring that interest into all the exciting things that are happening, whether it's the high quality IPOs and companies that we've seen. We know the kingdom is on the watch list for the JP Morgan Global Emerging Markets Index. We spent a lot of time with some of the advisors to really give a good flavor for what we think is necessary. Ensuring that the primary dealer market is providing minimum bids and tight bid-ask spreads, things of that nature, so that ultimately, if there is that supply, which we increasingly see, there needs to be a broad-based holding and then the ability for foreign investors to come in. And for us, that led us to leverage the ETF structure. We launched, I think about a year ago, a Saudi-oriented aggregate bond ETF, and it was very much a story of here, one of the highest credit ratings among all sort of emerging developing economies, and I'd say it's, obviously Saudi is more than that, but the growing local currency to go along with the hard currency and an opportunity for investors to take advantage in this great story. And we're working on others as ways of really telling the story. So I think it's a combination of understanding the dynamics in the kingdom, what the opportunities are, and then continuing to be sure that the liquidity, the transparency, the efficiency remains.
Well, thank you for that. Dina, welcome. Congratulations both on the role and making Saudi House your first, I think, panel at Davos. But building on what we've heard from the long-term institutional investors, you're in a super hot space, technology, meta, large language models, AI. What, in your view, is important around regulatory stability in terms of the way you think about large-scale capital allocation, or more broadly, when you're just sort of balancing commercial returns with some of your strategic and geopolitical considerations?
Well, it is my very first event, having been named about 7 days ago as president and vice chairman of Meta, and I'm honored to be here. Honored to be at Saudi House, and basically you can never say no to His Excellency Khaled Al-Falih. So excuse my tardiness, I landed and raced straight here. But my relationship with the kingdom goes back more than 25 years ago, and I have seen such extraordinary progress. Progress that I think has been a symbol for the entire region in terms of opening the economic development opportunities, the stability of capital. Vision 2030, I remember when His Excellency came to the White House in 2017, when I was Deputy National Security Advisor for President Trump. They laid out what really was this blueprint for the next couple of decades of how they would empower the more than 65% of the population in Saudi Arabia that is under 35 to reach their potential. So many women now at the very middle of being entrepreneurs, leading in many of the most critical industries. And frankly, when you have a country as important as Saudi Arabia, not just laying out this blueprint with very clear metrics, but executing on them year after year after year, it really gives the market an enormous amount of confidence. And that's why I was very proud to be one of the bankers that worked on the Aramco IPO, that to date is the largest IPO ever. And frankly, the strength that that provided the Tadawul at the time. So you see all these economic moments and capital moments that really are symbols broadly to global capital markets. But then you see the human piece. And I think this is where we are very proud at Meta to be a partner. We have a very strong partnership through Meta AI, of course, through WhatsApp. His Excellency is always saying to me, even before I was at Meta, you have to use WhatsApp, Tina. And of course, it is my favorite. WhatsApp me is what he always says. But I do want to do a special shout out to MISA. They are open for business in a way that I have not seen, Constantine. You are able to work with Michael, the entire team, go straight to the minister in a way that you are not, usually able to think about foreign direct investment, to think about investments in data centers, and frankly, in each of the giga projects. So I am so excited. I've always had a role where I've been a great partner to the kingdom, but I hope that this is going to allow us to work even more together.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Dina. Let me echo the openness and responsiveness of the team. I unfortunately was not one of the bankers on the Aramco. I wish I had been. I missed that one. Let me switch gears. We hear so much about the need for power and infrastructure to drive all of the new innovation and data centers and AI. Marco, you're right in the middle of that. Prime example in the kingdom of at-scale delivery of energy infrastructure. From your experience, what do you see as the key enablers, and what do you see as the role of your company in that process?
So thank you. ACWA Power, for those who don't know it, is the national champion for renewables, energy transition, desalination, green hydrogen. And in the past 3 years since I arrived, we doubled the size of the company, on the way to double again by 2030. And the doubling means adding $20 billion of investment every year. So it's already starting from a scale of a platform that was already phenomenal before I arrived. The scale up and the acceleration came thanks to Vision 2030 and everything that is going on there today. By the way, ACWA Power is a privately held company, listed. So 35% is still in the hands of the founders, 25% is listed on the stock market, that's the float. So that's also an evidence of Vision 2030, how the private entrepreneurship is supported by the country, in the country and outside, on competitive levels, but really on pragmatic and constructive levers so that we can grow not only in the country, but also in the 15 countries where we work. 40% of our investments of the $115 billion we have today is outside of the country. And as an expat coming into Saudi Arabia, I feel really so grateful about the opportunity I have. And let me tell you, because we talked about the contractual vision, and everything else, I would like to talk more about people and the system. So the first one is leadership. I do not see around the world a leadership as strong, positive, constructive, and hopeful for the future as we have in Saudi Arabia. I think you mentioned a word that is riddled with uncertainty, fear for the future. Saudi Arabia is a beacon of hope and stability. Even with all the geopolitical crises around, Saudi Arabia continues to carry on forward, stable, without changing the plans. Maybe reshifting some of the spending a little bit, but the plan stays there. And that's, for an investor, is the first thing that you look for, so that you don't have start and stops and you don't know what tomorrow will bring. This is a plan that will be delivered. And as I mentioned, we have today 30 gigawatt under construction in Saudi Arabia renewables, 12 gigawatt of combined cycles. Overall in the world, we have 47 gigawatts under construction. I think is the largest construction program in the world of any company outside of China. That's a different scale. So that's the first thing, leadership. The second one is the ministers and the ministries. They never sleep. It's amazing. No? So we have a great system in Saudi Arabia in power where they chose a dual track. So let me say, a track where you get it bilateral, we get the PIF program to deliver, that gives you the scale so you can deploy beyond the project. You can imagine to mobilize all this, we have to mobilize the supply chain from the logistics to the suppliers, engineering companies, the workers, and so on. If you don't have visibility long-term about the scale, you cannot plan for that. Our planning helps all the competitors to come for the tenders that set the price for our projects. So it's not that we get it like a free lunch or a free wheeling. They compete, thanks to our synergies and efficiency, they drive down the price like we do, and then we have to live with that and become even more efficient. So the ministers who work on this and give you the permits, the land, the interconnection, everything that you need to accelerate, to devise all this, to deliver it, to attract the competition, to attract the financing is the other thing that is, I think, very relevant. And the third one is partnerships. So we work in many countries. I'm European, I worked in the United States, I worked in Eastern Europe, in Russia, enough to know that every country you go, when you talk then and you're at the embassy and you talk to other investors, everybody will come up with the anecdote or the story of how they were in a bad situation with a partner, screwed by a partner, not happy with a partner. I have not heard a single anecdote in Saudi Arabia. And I think that this traces back to the culture. It's a culture of traders, and they know that trading is built for the long-term sustainability on trust. So you cannot go in transactionally, but you have to go in with a partnership. And that's what I see. So that's the fourth one. The next one is about myself, I would say. And the fact that I would argue Aqua Power, I think after Aramco, probably nothing to say about Ma'aden, SABIC and all that, is probably the second key company today in this transition. They entrusted it to a foreigner. And I found it such a great thing to say, we don't care where talent comes from. We develop it locally, we attract it. I think that that is the future of Saudi Arabia. It will be really a beacon of attracting professionals from around the world, first in the companies that exist, and then to drive new companies that will be established in the countries. And we see more and more of this. And the last one, I think it was mentioned already, is the young population. Again, for all the travels that I go around, we are in Europe now. You come here to Europe, you land at the airport, everybody's sad. There's no future. Demography is awful. We maxed out debt. We don't have natural resources. We have tensions all around. There we have a young population. Today is better than yesterday. Tomorrow is expected to be better than today. It's young, entrepreneurial. They come to work for us, but you see them. They have a drive really to learn and then to go on their own. So this is the last thing where I think that at the end of the day, it's the entrepreneurship, the young population, the demography that creates the demand for tomorrow. So this demand, I think, will be sustainable even beyond Vision 2030.
Well, I would echo all of that. And it's interesting, as Bloomberg has scaled its business at a much smaller base, back in the day, if you wanted to send an executive there, they might go reluctantly. Now we're finding that they're finding their way, and all those cultural things, the upgrading of their partners, business people, women in the workplace, all of a sudden the ecosystem is far more appealing. And I think that continues to be part of that momentum. So thanks for that, Marco. Noubar, can I just bring you in just on sort of innovation and public-private alignment? We've talked about that. Flagship has shown how value creation can turn science into scalable platforms in regulated markets. From your experience, what's your sense, what's your lens, as it were, on how governments should continue to partner with the private sector on that type of value creation to catalyze precisely the sorts of things that His Excellency was talking about?
Sure. Well, as you've heard, everything's been said already. I just haven't said it myself. So I'll give it a shot with the lens of science and what we're experiencing. So Flagship is a company that consists of about 45 biotech companies, all of which we've created, and AI companies. And so we have the opportunity, based in Boston, to really create the frontier of scientific research as it applies to medicine and agriculture and other areas. And when we started, we've had a financial relationship with the kingdom for many years, over a decade, but more recently, for the last 2 years, we've actually responded to the call invitation by them to think what could the future of a more vibrant, cutting-edge biomedicine activity be in the kingdom. Just the fact that we were asked that question, I think, shows a difference. The way we look at the world, there are people who work in the present and get the future they deserve, or there's people who work in the future and then they use the present to serve that future. My observation with the kingdom and all the words, I'm looking outside this glass saying bold vision, I think that the whole idea is to reverse the time arrow such that you obsess over the future and you use the present to serve that future. That makes things a lot easier to align, because if in that future you want health security, prosperity that's driven by a scientific endeavor, connecting data from humans, their medical conditions, their genetics, all the way to better medicines. And you realize that we're in a period of time where this whole field of biotechnology is essentially becoming an information technology. And so there's the opportunity to come in late and realize that you're actually very early, because what AI is doing as we speak, and as we're kind of driving a lot of, to the ability to dramatically change our understanding of disease, our understanding how to preempt it, delay it, and treat it, cure it, all sorts of things, is right at the beginning. So our discussions, in the beginning, we were wondering, well, really, can you go from not having much? Obviously, they have a good healthcare system, but in terms of the translational ability, and what we've seen in the last 2 years is a level of partnership that you've heard across industries. I think what you've heard also about the not sleeping, our experience with His Excellency, the team at MISA, is that they only work with us. I'm quite convinced, I don't know why all of you guys are here, but I'm quite convinced that they, to the extent that we are able to scale, they're able to scale with us. And I think that is an important thing. So what I think it's going to take is consistency. I think it's going to take these dualities. We often talk in the kind of company creation, cutting edge science fields, the duality between optimism and paranoia. We embody that in everything we do, so we consider ourselves paranoid optimists. Likewise, I think what the kingdom needs is a form of short-term patience and long-term impatience. In other words, when things go wrong is when the impatience becomes short-term. Because when you're trying to venture into kind of significant changing, AI is a good example of this. If I get $1 for every time somebody says, what's the revenue model for an AI company that's essentially creating models that can predict what you're about to say? I mean, it's good. That's a good question. It's good discipline. But you got to ask yourself, what's the right time frame? So at least in the scientific areas, I think we see an alignment. We're working very hard. The last thing I'll say is this word scale. A lot of places in the world have tried to create the right conditions for biotechnology, and generally it's been a failure because it's been a lot of early stage companies that take forever to become large companies. What we think instead in this environment could be the potential to create a mid-sized company right up front and build it up as a significant presence. You might say, could there be a top global contender in 10, 15 years that is based in the kingdom, based in the region, serving local and global patients with new medicines? Our answer to that is why not? And the science, the technology, the complementary AI infrastructure, all that, and the regulator, the FDA in Saudi Arabia, we've been impressed by their wanting to adopt the most cutting edge and adaptive approaches. So, I'm not complimenting them, I'm expressing a paranoid optimism that great things can be done there. And the ability to bring what they've learned in the power industry, in the financial industry, in lots of other industries, entertainment, and bring it to yet another industry is also quite heartening, because we can then co-create. We can use business models that they know about that we have not really considered globally. So all of that is to say, I think the scale opportunity exists there, and it's really inviting a lot of talent.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that point on regulation, I mean, if you go to the FII, certainly in our space, financial services, market regulation, you see that holding to account, okay, progress in equities, progress in other markets, where are we in fixed income? And an honest and candid assessment in the kingdom of what needs to be done. So that's the sort of question I'd like you to hold. Excellency was asking us beforehand. I think we've had partnership, innovation, youth, growth, tremendous work ethic, all on the plus side of the balance sheet. But as we think about going forward, areas from your experience that perhaps the kingdom could refocus on, double down on, perhaps I'll start with you, from Anuj from Brookfield at the beginning, because you kicked it off with a really sort of, I think, articulate sense of the quality of the opportunity. Where else does the kingdom need to sort of double down, refocus, perhaps do a little bit better? And then I'll ask all of our panelists to do the same.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always refer to the kingdom as being a place that offers emerging markets returns with developed market risk. And that's why we love it. You get the growth of India, but you get an environment that feels like you're in the developed markets. Not many places in the world offer that. The reason it has this developed market risk is because they're very focused on building in proper processes, governance, and all the other things to make foreign investors comfortable. My only worry sometimes is it's amazing to have all of that because you want to have the confidence of foreign investors to invest, but too much of it can create bureaucracy. And sometimes bureaucracy can get in the way of the actual action. And what we, I think, need to see, what we want to see more of as well in the kingdom is not as many signed contracts, but more dollars in the ground, activity on the ground, progress. And I think we're at that tipping point now where that's going to start happening. And that needs, the rest of, I think, just that balance between how much governance and process do we have to be a truly global environment that people feel comfortable investing in versus sometimes how do we get past some of these challenges and get action on the ground.
That's really interesting. Yusin, your perspective from State Street, you've been active there. You talked about the opportunity set, areas for potential improvement, refocus.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think one of the goals of the kingdom and His Excellency is really to have a very vibrant asset management community in the kingdom. And there have been a lot of really, I think, very good steps taken. Clear rules of the road in terms of desires for companies to name Saudi as their regional headquarters, to ensure that we're employing a certain percentage of local talent so that we're basically helping the local population really achieve the kind of knowledge and expertise that we might bring. And I think in particular, bringing the sovereign wealth funds, public investment fund, et cetera, to really be, in a way, public-private partnership alongside us. I think in many respects, I suspect for a lot of my panelists, it really helps lengthen that sort of longer-term view, create that stability, even take some of the risk. And I think that continues to be very helpful, and is one thing that I hope will continue. Because many of our competitors, ourselves, we are really devoting a lot of resources locally. And we want to do so because we really believe in the opportunity. At the same time, we're all running businesses. And so we also want to be in a position where we know that the efforts that we put in with the capital that we can have seeded allows us then to really scale that on a global basis. And I think those kinds of partnerships where it's very clear what the rules of the road are, also understanding what each brings to the table, but then realizing that in order to achieve the ambition, Vision 2030, which is just phenomenal, enabling all of these private companies that are coming in to be able to also see that same sort of realization and ambition for themselves.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Dina, it feels a little unfair because you've only been in role for a few days, but you have a long history with the kingdom. So your perspective, your lens on the sort of forward path.
I don't think people realize the extent of the strategy of well over a decade ago by His Royal Highness, and then, of course, his bold team, to think about moving away from natural resources being the only source of revenue for the kingdom. And His Excellency is always reminding me that, I think it's next year, the year after, that the GDP growth of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will come from this diversification of the economy in technology, in longevity, in biotech, in new sources of energy, et cetera. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable thing, that where revenue will now come from for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its people will not be what was inherent in the beginning. And so that's why you see the swiftness on the giga projects, the implementation of all these diversified sectors within Vision 2030. And I think that they are superhuman in some ways in how they work, but I do think focus, and focus is something that I think is very important. And I think that's why His Excellency has also made it a big priority just over the last 12 months to also bring in, as you say, both private companies, but families, private families from around the world that have been coming to the region, but oftentimes in other countries. And I do think these large global families bring very much a new perspective, new capital, but also an ethos and a set of values that match those very same values of the kingdom. And then, of course, technology. I was when my daughters asked me, why I was taking on this role, I said it's not exaggerating to say that we are in a moment in time where technology may well impact the face of humanity and what happens. And it's one of those transformations which is not 10 or 20 years. It's 3 to 5 to 8 years. And so I think amongst the many focuses of the kingdom, it's really wonderful to see the desire to partner with technology companies and the desire to frankly help them realize their ambitions within the kingdom as well. So I think that continued focus, because that one lever leverages everything, multifold in a very dramatic way.
I completely echo the thoughts on technology. I mean, Bloomberg, a big technology company, and we are at a moment of maximal disruption. And I think at the end of the week, we'll feel that even more. Marco, going back to your thoughts, super positive, both in terms of the empowerment of you, both individually, the organization, the culture. Where can you see some scope for improvement?
Yeah, I always try to look at myself first. So this year we did the first financing with KEXIM, the first one with SACE, the Italian Export Credit Agency, and more importantly, the first private debt with the insurance company. So I think what I would say is I agree with you. We need to bring more capital. We have, I would say, $14-15 billion every year that we invest in Saudi Arabia. We need to step up more to attract sovereign wealth fund, insurance companies, pension funds. What I ask in exchange is this is not an emerging country. So if you expect developing countries return in an A-plus country, you don't see them. No, you have to realize. So I think that we did the first breakthrough with this insurance company. Now I need to step up more to try to bring it and scale it. So that's what we can do. I think the second point is, I think, focused and I think the pace. We're all exhausted. We never sleep. So I think it's really taxing on people, and we need to find a way to make it more sustainable. I think that's something we are working on. My goal, my ideal world is the same weekend around the world. Because by definition, if the world works with Saturday, Sunday, and we work with Friday, Saturday, that means that everybody in our company only has 1 day off, if at all. No, because we need to work, because you cannot have 3 days off a week. So that's the second thing that's structural, and I think I know very difficult to achieve. The last one is, I think, the converse of the speed. Because of the speed, everything, it looks like I'm focused, but the point is there's no enough resources for everything that is going on. So everything is last minute, and it's very difficult to plan. So that's the thing where I think over time, you get more people on the ground, more rebalancing of projects over the long term after you are post this first scale up, and I think that things will rebalance.
Well, thank you for that. I'll close with you, Noubar, and I'll just check we haven't got any pressing questions from the QR codes, because I think we need to wrap it up. But your sense of, you sort of articulated very clearly that quality of the opportunity. What have you heard that you think could also be amplified, underscored in the kingdom?
Well, I think this technology kind of dominated era that we're in is about to spill over into, as I mentioned, medicine, where it will become a technology industry for the first time. And so we call this within Flagship a data to medicines paradigm. If it's going to be all about converting data to medicines, and the kingdom already wants to own the conversion of energy to data, then extending that pipeline all the way from one kind of pipeline to a pipeline of drugs, pipeline of assets, pipeline of kind of futuristic solutions, is a pretty big, bold vision that is a stack on top of the technology, the data technology. But for that, I think that one needs not just vision, but a confidence that it can be done. And I'd say that one of the things that often emerging countries, however much resource they have, is they wonder whether they should go first, whether they should just wait for a bunch of places to do this and then come in with resources and do it even better. And the question, I think, will be, post-pandemic at least, a lot of countries have felt vulnerable, and so there's appetite for getting resilience, which often means supply chains, but is it enough to just have resilience of old things, or do you want to have resilience of being able to lead the way in a field like this? And so I think that is going to need confidence, and it's also going to need alignment. And I think that's the other, I would say, difficult thing, is when you're dealing with people and industries and segments you haven't dealt with before, how do you create the right alignment? In the financial services area, I could imagine alignment is one set of relationships, but here you need to align all the way from a patient who's getting a benefit to a scientific experiment or to clinical trials with humans, how to create that whole workflow in the kingdom. That's something that I think that that's where I mean the patience has to come in, is that this really is a completely new paradigm. I think it can be done probably easier in places that it doesn't exist in part, such that you can actually build it for the future. And so I would say continued commitment to a future backward partnership between private and public sector approach, as opposed to thinking the free market will somehow create this capability. I think in medicine, that's a hard thing to do, let alone in a reasonable time frame.
Well, thank you for that. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Thank you, Excellency. I think it tells you by the level and seniority and breadth of the participants of the panel how exciting the kingdom is right now. There's plenty of work still to be done. Last time I was there, I'm from London, and if someone had told me that I was going to spend 2 days in the kingdom and do a big fixed income project and then watch Ronaldo play and then watch a world heavyweight title fight, I would have said, really? Down in Rep? But there's so much going on in the kingdom, tourism, Diriyah, the projects, but I think fundamentally this aspiration to really execute on the goals that they've set and really hold themselves to account, I think, is what's exciting. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for the discussion and debate, and thank you for all the attendees. Enjoy the rest of Davos.